Well, we're now on to day 6 of Halloween Horror Movies 4. And for day 6, we're going to the world of stop motion again, like we did last year with one review. And one of 2 stop motion reviews. And today's look is, it seems like what this one is telling me, that it's all fun and games until someone raises the dead.
Drop on by the Clown Cafe. Drop on by the Clown Cafe. The grub is downright gruesome, but your appetite's obey. 'Cause food's a little funny, food's a little funny, food's a little funny at the Clown Cafe. Drop on by the Clown Cafe, your favorite meals on wheels. The menu is disgusting and it's full of special deals. Nothing here is good for you, so grab yourself a tray. 'Cause food's a little funny at the Clown Cafe. Drop on by the Clown Cafe. Drop on by the Clown Cafe. Gobble up your order quick before it runs away. 'Cause food's a little funny at the Clown Cafe. Why not visit after school and have yourselves a bite? An appetizing appetizer certain to delight. We haven't done it right unless it makes your teeth decay. 'Cause food's a little funny at the Clown Cafe. Drop on by the Clown Cafe. Drop on by the Clown Cafe. The grub is downright gruesome, but your appetites obey. 'Cause food's a little funny, food's a little funny, food's a little funny at the Clown Cafe.
Hey everyone, it's Don G. Corleone here, and I'm here with episode 6 of Halloween Horror Movies Season 4. And this episode is going to be for another stop-motion film, like I did last year. And which stop-motion film are you asking? Well, you remember last season, in Season 3 last year, when I reviewed LAIKA's first feature film, Coraline? Well, this year, we're going back to LAIKA, or whatever you want to call them, and we're going to review their next stop-motion feature they made after that film, 3 years later. And it's also somewhat of a horror-ish film, except this one is more of a horror comedy, unlike Coraline, which was more of a straight-up horror film, a straight-up serious horror film. And this one is going to be 2012's ParaNorman, which is directed by Sam Fell and Chris Butler. And Sam Fell, one of these two, worked on an Iron Man feature, and it was not a successful one. It was their biggest box office bomb yet, and it was what killed their DreamWorks contract. Yeah, that one's flushed away, obviously. It's from the director of Flushed Away. One of the directors, anyways. But what's the plot of ParaNorman? Well, in the town of Bliff Hollow, Norman Babcock as a boy can speak to the dead, no one besides his eccentric new friend Neil believes his ability is real. Then one day, Norman's estranged, eccentric uncle tells him of an important annual ritual he must take up to protect the town from a curse cast by a witch it condemned centuries ago. Eventually, Norman decides to cooperate, but things don't go well according to plan, and now a magic storm of the witch threatens Bliff Hollow as a cursed dead rise. And together with unexpected new companions, Norman struggles to save his town, only to discover the horrific truth of the curse. With that insight, Norman must resolve the crisis for good as only he can, and no one else can. So how was this made? Well, the idea of the film came from Chris Butler, who, realizing that zombie films often contain a degree of social commentary, thought making such a movie for kids could help express the challenges kids faced growing up. Then production of the stop-motion animation feature took place at LAIKA Studio in Hillsboro, Oregon. And the film was in production for 3 years, with the animation stage of production lasting about 2 years and beginning in late 2009. literally just some months after they released their first debut feature film. Rather than using traditional 3D format cameras, the studio had 60 Canon EOS D 5D Mark II DSLR cameras to film the movie. An advertising agency, Whitten and Kennedy, created the campaign for the film. And ParaNorman was the first ever stop-motion film to use full-color 3D printers for replacement animation. LAIKA's previous film Coraline had pioneered and popularized the use of black and white 3D printers, which sped up puppet production considerably and allowed the team to make up the large number of puppet faces required for the film. And a quote that Fell says that quite often it's the stop-motion movies that are more out there, which he told New York Times, and they were quirkier and a little harder to pin down. So, after ParaNorman was officially shot and marketed, it would go on to be released into theaters by Focus Features on August 17th, 2012. And when it came to the reactions, well, much like the last film LAIKA did, it received generally positive reviews from critics, who praised the animation, script, entertainment value, and humor. And at the box office, it didn't make as much as Coraline did, but it was a modest box office success. And it earned $107 million worldwide against its budget of $60 million. And of course, it was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature and BAFTA Award for Best Animated Film. Sadly, it lost the Academy Award to that shitty film Brave. Or that boring, overrated as fuck film Brave. Fuck that movie. Now, as for my reaction, I consider this, surprisingly, an underrated stop-motion horror comedy film that was a perfect continuation from LAIKA's debut success with Coraline, which I reviewed last year for the last year's season, and it's easily one of the most underrated stop-motion films yet. When this came out, it was like just there to most people. It's there to most audiences, and once it left theaters, some people likely just forgot its existence. Just kind of like with kind of like LAIKA's two features they did after Coraline before Kubo came out. It was just there, and then when it left theaters, just forgotten and disappeared. Much like with the film they did after this, The Box Trolls, which to me is LAIKA's weakest feature. But with this movie, ParaNorman, I particularly liked how humor was cleverly added throughout the movie. They even managed to make the brutal part of the movie spark laughter throughout the theater. And I also liked how the messages of the story are inspiring to people, where you don't have to be the same as everyone else to achieve greatness. And one person, no matter how small, can make a difference, or even a crowd can get swayed by everything. And some of the main messages in the end of the movie, they still make sure you have a deep understanding of both point of views, the good and the evil. And the film remains resolutely positive and feeling up to the end, even when the subjects approach their mob mentality, hysterical fear, and the killing of children by said fearful mob. There's some issues with it, of course, like what happened to all the ghosts that Norman saw in the beginning. The movie just starts with them moving out of his way to avoid the plethora of ghosts in his path, but then they eventually just disappear, except for the ones directly related to the script. But overall, though, I thought it was just a nice film. And Norman, who's voiced by Cody Smith-McPhee, is an outcast. You want to know why? Because he talks to dead people. And we indeed see them as well, chatting with our hero on his walk to school, but from everyone else's point of view, because they can't see the dead, they think he's just being weird. Oh, and his grandmother, as a ghost, talks to him all the time while sitting on the couch in the living room. No one understands the dude, who's as resignedly freaked out as, or who's pretty much like Haley Joel Osment's character in The Sixth Sense. So he really has no one else to talk to apart from some ghosts. And not his parents or his sister, and especially not even the school bully at his school, for sure. And it's only when Norman has an episode during the production of a school play, which is not coincidentally about an old legend surrounding his town's dark past. And he also gains a friend who's another outcast, which is Neil, who teaches Norman that it's best to not let people bother you, or to not let them get under your skin. And had the story just ended there, we may have had this nice, tidy after-school special, but it does not, because from almost out of nowhere, Norman's black sheep uncle, played by John Goodman, a heavily bearded, slightly loony chap, informs Norman that he, Norman himself, must take the mantle of he who holds off the witch's curse, and Mr. P's been hiding it for all these years. but he thinks he's about to go, so he warns Norman it's all up to him and he must read from the book and then he dies. Which was kind of an intentional round sentence. And thereby our actual plot of the movie is set in motion. Norman must extricate said book from dead uncle, and then read it by the witch's grave in order to break the curse that no one believes is real. And they don't believe it on account of Mr. Dead Uncle has been reading from the book for his entire life, and someone before him, and so on. And now Dead Uncle is, well, demised, and just for the witches to rise from the ashes and wreak havoc. And the curse definitely goes like this. This little girl named Aggie was suspected of witchcraft by town elders and was sentenced to death. So you can see why she would definitely want to haunt those elders in the town itself for all eternity. Then there's also people raised from the dead, and the imagery is definitely striking. Bones, stringy hair, rent clothing, the ability to remove an appendage and reattach it. And are they zombies just only there to lay waste the town, or are they victims of their own device? But it's up to Norman and his brain and his ability to talk to dead people to save the day, even despite being grounded after the skull play incident. There are several themes in this film that are definitely well developed and ultimately resolved to perfect satisfaction. The animation's incredible. I love the creative camera shots the directors chose in many scenes, which are definitely much more advanced than the usual animated film. This movie itself even has a still ice feel, much like the movie Gremlins did. And the town looks like a Hollywood backlot, a made-up town that doesn't actually exist. The characters are all archetypes of the genre. The humor is definitely mature for children, and probably a little to 21st century for a lot of parents, but this makes the movie even better. And it's still plenty to enjoy for just about anybody that watches it. Norman's a very likable character, and so are most of the other characters, especially Norman's uncle. And not to mention the zombies are actually pretty hilarious and fun characters too, and they really flavor up the movie. Like, they're not just the cliched zombies that are just there to wreak havoc. They're not created from a plague. You find out that they're actually the same villagers that sentenced Daggy to death, and got them all cursed into this in the first place. And now they want Norman to end the mistake they did, because they now realize the mistake they caused, and now they want Norman to end it so that they can be at peace. And the character designs are definitely pretty grotesque, but Norman's the most normal-looking character in the whole movie. And the other characters, though, have kind of weird designs. They have either enormous bellies, lip-sided faces, or reverse triangle-shaped bodies. And zombies too have elongated faces and body parts that repeatedly fall off. Many scenes from the film do pay homage to classic horror and monster flicks, which are definitely done in ways that are funny, enjoyable, and subtle. Back onto Norman himself, Norman just might have to be one of the best outcasts written for a movie I've seen. So his reasonings for feeling forlorn make sense as only he can see the dead. He manages to sit from angsty to caring and serious rather smoothly, and it's hard not to root for him when he needs to fix his main problems. And with that being said, the rest of the characters are kind of more of a mix. Some characters like Mr. Pendergast, Norman's friend Neil, his older sister, then his mother, and school bully Alvin, and Neil's brother Mitch, who actually is an pretty hilarious side character I'll get to in a bit. They do give enough contribution to the plot while also being funny every now and then, but others like Norman's dad, the townsfolk, Norman's teachers, and others are just there and don't offer too much substance. And plus, Norman's dad just kind of comes off as an asshole half the film, so it's kind of hard to really like his character. But the best side characters in the entire movie definitely would be the zombies, because at first they come off as your typical resin-braiding corpses, but the film goes on, and we learn more about their backstories, which perfectly explain why the witch went insane. And these backstories actually paint them as legitimately foolish people who made the worst mistakes of their lives, and it's hard not to feel sorry for them. It's real talk. Like, sometimes we know there's people in the world that will do stupid things that they'll regret later on. I certainly have. Definitely don't try to be like them. Learn to become a better human being, because otherwise you might end up causing as much harm to yourself as those around you. And that's kind of a good message their characters have. And LAIKA never holds back in pushing the envelope of what stop motion can do, and they really recreate a mysterious town like Witch Hollow, adding to the relatively bleak tone the town sets. The characters themselves look freaky by design while still looking appealing, and showing how the macabre Sleepy Hollow, maybe even Coraline as well, inspired the crew, which the studio also made. The effects animation is another major highlight for how vibrant and creative it gets with its colors and elements. Even though the film would likely scare in some moments, it's hard not to drop what their draws when viewing such well-crafted props, effects, scenery, and characters. And much like their LAIKA's previous film, ParaNorman actually follows the horror path, much like its last success. A plot for those coming into the news late. It's about this outcast who has the ability to communicate with the dead. His unique gifts are not accepted by just about anyone around him, and he gets ridiculed and pushed around. But then it's going to come in handy when the departed witch of the town decides to return and raise the dead to attack the town. Now, that being said, though, despite some of the horror elements it would likely have, this movie's definitely not as dark as Coraline. Instead, the staff pretty much here decided to clearly swap the warped, creepy dimensions of the Beldam's world for a more country town classic that is a lot more kid-friendly. Although some of the residents are definitely not alive, they still look funny and friendly to make both Yun and Yun are chuckling at the crafty designs. And then it's until the horror elements don't really start until the witch actually awakes. Which is the only really dark thing in this whole movie. And it has a good portrayal of the subject of death. And it's surprisingly covered thoroughly. Even when the trouble starts to scare factor in the movie, it's still relatively low, as most of the scenes are still more funny than terrifying. Even some of the horror scenes in this movie are more funny than terrifying. The other strength of the movie is the stop-motion animation. Like, during a lot of scenes, normally the game moves smoothly through their environment, from simple walking and talking to running and escaping zombie attacks, and it's surprising how much detail they took to the animation. The fantastic animation also matches the voice work from the cast, which may be no problem for computer animation, but it's sure to be more of a challenge for clay animation. Even the ghost flowing motions were well done. The gestures and facial expressions mirroring the attitudes of the ghosts in the movie. As for zombie movies, well, again, the team did their hard work and got the slow, dragged, labored movements down pat as well. The ending of the movie even helps keep the movie fun, organized, and smooth in both story and movement as Norman continues the journey through the dead. When it comes to the whole voice cast, this movie, Cody Smith-McPhee does the voice of Norman very well and does a great job here. He fits the role nicely, and he certainly relates to the little outcasted boy who can't find favor with anyone, even his own family. And his voice works well in the role, and it's probably his best, and honestly, I think this is his best performance yet. And one newcomer around this time who hasn't really done much ever since, Tucker Albrizzi, does a great job as Norman's newfound friend Neil. And then it comes to the rest of the characters. Then you got ParaNorman's little sister Courtney, who's voiced by Pitch Perfect star Anna Kendrick, who's actually definitely really good as Norman's less than intelligent teenage sister, and honestly here, a much better voice performance than some of you likely will know her as that. You all know that annoying as fuck lead protagonist in the Trolls films. For those who are still familiar with DreamWorks that have not retired from DreamWorks yet. You know, that irritating as fuck pink thing? That unlikable thing that the movies try to make us actually like, but reality, that character keeps making such stupid decisions that it's hard to even like her at all. That's not the case with this character. No. The sister in this movie is probably one of the few examples of an annoying older sister done right. Kendrick did this role flawlessly. And same can be said for Casey Affleck as Mitch, who's another one of my favorite side characters in the movie. And to be fair, like their running gag, the two characters' running gag chemistry, like attempted relationship, is priceless and very fun to watch. Where the older sister has this crush on Mitch throughout the film and keeps trying to get with him. And then we find out there's this funny twist involving his character I won't reveal till later. Then you also got Christopher Mintz-Plasse, who perfectly captures Bully Alvin's voice, but I'm not sure his character really worked in this film. but he does the voice well. Now, granted, despite the lighthearted moments, it's not to say there aren't any dark moments here, because Norman and his friends are often put into serious danger many times, and part of the witch's backstory, especially when you find out who she really is definitely rather unsettling. Then again, the biggest theme of this movie is fear, like how it can hold you back from doing things you need or want to do, and how it can affect who you let in your life or not, and how much damage it can cause when it holds so strongly that people lose control of their better judgment. And ParaNorman succeeds in getting its crazy characters to fit perfectly in their shoes, and the movie's a perfect example of how innovative movies should be produced. And it manages to come up with hilarious sequences that leave you in fits of laughter, and like all movies for kids, this one ends with a good lesson. The best thing about this movie has to be all the funny scenes, and like all the movies, I think what definitely mattered the most was the well thought out plot. I absolutely love the way Norman puts his thoughts together to convey the townspeople to not do something by showing them how that was wrong. And throughout, the movie's is actually laced with some decent enough adult humor and even adult themes. Some moments of it I liked, some moments of it I did not. And the movie seems like it's marketed towards children, but honestly, this movie's more for teenagers and adults. And once again, guys, animation, regardless, stop motion, computer animation, normal animation, is not just for kids like people today seem to think it is. And it deals with great messages like death, bullying, and even pokes fun at homosexuality, which are necessary components to adult life. And I do like the finale of this movie too. How the finale goes, it goes like this. Like, once Norman realizes he's only the one that can stop the curse, he climbs the hall's tower to read the book in a last-ditch effort to finish the ritual, but the witch strikes the book with lightning and hurls Norman from the tower and deep into the archives. Then, while Norman's unconscious, he has a dream where he learns that the witch is Agatha, or Aggie, the little girl of his age, and a distant relative who is also a medium. Norman realizes Aggie was wrongfully convicted by the town council when they mistook her powers for witchcraft. Then after awakening, Norman encounters the zombies, and they find out they're actually the town council who convicted Aggie. And the zombies then admit they only wanted to speak with him to ensure that he would take up the ritual to minimize the damage of the mistake they made so long ago. Norman attempts to help the zombies slip away so they can guide him to Aggie's grave, but is cornered by the mob. But then Cordy, Mitch, Neil, and Alvin rally to Norman's side finally and confront the crowd, arguing that their rage, fear, and misunderstanding makes them no different from the cursed townsfolk from long ago, and the mob realizes to err their ways. But that doesn't matter though, because the witch starts to unleash her powers and create greater havoc throughout the town. So one of the zombies, Judge Hopkins, guides Norman's family to the grave in a forest before the grave is reached, and Aggie's magical powers separate Norman from the others. Norman finds the grave and interacts with Aggie's vengeful ghost, who's now determined to stop the catalytic tantrums she has been having over the years. And though she keeps attempting to push him away, not wanting to hear the story he's trying to read her, Norman holds his ground though. He doesn't give up. He tells her that he understands how she feels as an outcast, that her vengeance only made her like the ones who wronged her, and it causes her to remember happier days. And now having finally encountered someone who understands her plight, and by remembering her caring mother, Aggie is able to find a measure of peace and crosses over to the afterlife, finally at peace. And then the storm dissipates, and she, the zombies, and even the judge all fade away. They're all finally at peace from their mistake. And then the whole town cleans up and regards Norman as a hero. Then our very last scene again, much like how the movie opened up with Norman watching a horror film with his ghost grandma. He was the only one in the room at the time. This scene, it happens again. And once again, he's watching another horror film with the ghost of his grandmother, except this time his family now actually joins him in the room, and they've grown to accept Norman for who he is. So it's a nice little bookend right there. Begins how it started, ends exactly how it started. And this time actually joined by the family that really didn't believe his ability, and now finally accepted his ability. Oh, and even during the ending scene, and I mentioned Courtney and Mitch's relationship. She tries to ask Mitch out on a date, but out to a flick that's definitely not a horror film. And then Mitch is like, "Whoa, you're gonna love my boyfriend. He really loves chick flicks." And then we find out Mitch is gay, which surprisingly, that actually works. It's a nice little LGBT reference that's not forced in. It's done actually lightly and innocently here. and it's actually done for humor. Right here, it's a nice little twist. And it honestly just makes Mitch an even funnier character. Right there. However, though, that being said, I do have a few problems with the film. Much like with every good film, though, occasionally. Like, some of the humor I did like, but there's often times when I found some of the humor just a little stale, especially most of the jokes done by the Alvin character. Well, I didn't mind his character, but I just feel like the Alvin character just wasn't really needed. Didn't really need to be. I don't think they really needed him for the finale. I don't think he really needed to be part of the game during the last few minutes, because he doesn't really serve much of a purpose to the plot. Except be your average school bully, and that's just about it. And I also don't like most of the vulgar jokes in this film. Like, the jokes I don't like in this film, the ones I could give less of a shit about, are the scene in the beginning where Norman comments on his older sister stashing pictures of a football player in her underwear drawer. And much like I've already mentioned Norman's dad in this film, I just found his dad to be such an asshole the entire film. And once his dad finally accepts Norman for who he is at the end and congratulates his son ending the curse, it just feels forced. Because almost just all the movie, he's just kind of rude and unpleasant and treats Norman like garbage. So I kind of don't really buy his realization, and it just feels forced and badly written. Right there. That's just my honesty. However, I think that's it, because regardless of the problems I had, I still think ParaNorman's an underrated stop-motion flick. In the end, ParaNorman is worth watching and buying for those that want to get their kids into horror films, along with LAIKA's feature before this, Coraline, and want to get them into the zombie genre, and those that love stop-motion films in general. Anyway, that's it for my view of ParaNorman. And what if I'm going to rate ParaNorman? Here's how I'm going to rate this movie. So overall, if you're a fan of stop-motion films and LAIKA and zombie movies in general, then this is totally worth a watch and by no doubt. And if you're wondering how I'm going to rate ParaNorman, I'm going to give ParaNorman an 8.5 out of 10. There we go. That wraps up my review for ParaNorman. So you're wondering what the next episode's going to be. Well, the next episode's going to be for yet another stop-motion film. And it's not a LAIKA one, it's an individual one. And it's done by Tim Burton. It was from the year 2005. It was one of his collaborations with Johnny Depp and Helena Bonham Carter. And it's actually three films from Tim Burton that are going to be part of this. And this is the first one of these. And let's just say how the plot of this one went. It involves the marriage to a dead girl. Yes, guys, Corpse Bride is going to be the next episode. So stay tuned for that. But until then, that'll be it for this episode. Thank you all for watching. If you want to see more, don't forget to subscribe to Don G. Corleone.